Hello everyone. In this video, we'll do the daily current affairs analysis of 22nd November 2021. So the first topic which we will discuss is about green hydrogen. Next is what is the UVC technology, how the political parties are registered, about the lateral entry. Next is about the fly ash. Next, about the Istanbul Convention on Violence Against Women, about the National Productivity Council. So the first topic is about green hydrogen. So why it is in the news? Because the Indian Oil Corporation, it has floated a global tender to set up the green hydrogen generation units at two of its major refineries in North India as part of the Narendra Modi government's national hydrogen mission. So the IOCL is the country's largest commercial undertaking with the most refineries. So what is green hydrogen and how does it work? This is very much important for the prelims and the mains also, both for prelims and mains. So the green hydrogen is hydrogen that is created by electrolysis with renewable energy and has no carbon footprint. So that is the most important thing for reducing the carbon emissions to become carbon neutral, on which a lot of countries are focusing on. This is the most important thing. Okay, so today's hydrogen is derived from fossil fuels, which are the most common source. So if the usage of fossil fuels is there, so the carbon neutrality cannot be achieved to the fullest extent possible. So that is why the green hydrogen has to become a precedence, because it is created with the help of electrolysis done with the renewable energy sources. So that is why the dependence on fossil fuels is reduced to the minimum, and hence the carbon neutrality that can be achieved to the maximum extent possible, which helps to control the heating, the rate of increase of earth's temperature, which reduces the melting of glaciers in the short run, which ultimately reduces the instances of flood in the short run, and also in the long run it reduces the instances or the probability of droughts or water scarcity. So also preventing issues like food security, and like instances of increased natural disasters like more landslides, earthquakes, etc., which disrupts the entire human capital, because it disrupts the livelihood of the people, it disrupts the per capita income of the population which lives in the vulnerable areas, which ultimately affects the economy of that particular nation, and which ultimately impacts the international economy also. The economy at the international level is also impacted. So that is why the switching to the green hydrogen is very very important. So the green hydrogen's importance we will see. It is critical for India to reach its INDC targets, which are nothing but to reduce the carbon neutrality, reduce the carbon dependence, and become a carbon neutral nation, as declared by the Prime Minister of India at the COP26, which was held recently in Glasgow, that India will become carbon neutral by 2070, which means the amount of carbon generated by India will be equal to the amount of carbon which is absorbed through various sources, through the increase in the level of forest cover, etc., which will balance out the amount of carbon generated and the amount of carbon absorbed, which will not result in contribution to enhance the rate of heat, rate of increase in earth's temperature. So India will become a carbon neutral country by 2070, and for that the switching to the green hydrogen is very very important, because India is also enhancing its electric vehicle ecosystem. So that is why that, combined with the green hydrogen ecosystem, has to become a precedence if India has to really become a carbon neutral nation by 2070. So this assures the regional and national energy security, access, and availability. So, green hydrogen can be used as an energy storage alternative, which will be necessary in the future to address renewable energy intermittencies. In terms of mobility, green hydrogen can be utilized in railways, huge ships, buses, and trucks, among other things, for long distance mobilizations, for either urban fleet movement within cities and states, or or for people. So this will ultimately, enhance the ease of living of people, and also the ease of doing business, which will increase the productivity of the businesses, reduce the input costs, because the freight costs will reduce, which will ultimately reduce the input costs of raw material, thereby increasing the efficiency of the businesses, thereby enhancing their profits, which will ultimately enhance the tax prospects of the government, because if the income of the businesses and the per capita income of the workers which are working there increases, so ultimately the tax prospects of the government increase, because from both the direct sources, which are the income tax and the corporation tax, and also the amount of indirect taxes like the excise duty, customs duty, and the goods and services tax, which increases because of the increase in the spending rate and the savings rate of the people. As a result of the increase in per capita income, that also increases. So that is why this switching to green hydrogen has multiple benefits from the ecological perspective as well, and from the economic perspective as well, which is ultimately linked to the social and political justice also. Because if people have a higher per capita income, so automatically their social status will improve, they will have more independence to take political decisions. So the prospects of social, economic, and political justice, as mentioned in the preamble of the Indian Constitution, will automatically be achieved in a better manner, and thus the government's emphasis on sabka saath, sabka vikas, and sabka vishwas, that promise will also be ensured in a better manner. So that is why the fulfillment or the switching of to the green energy or the green hydrogen is very very important. So the green hydrogens uses include ammonia and methanol are examples of green chemicals that can be used directly in existing applications such as fertilizers, mobility, power, chemicals, and shipping. To acquire universal adoption, green hydrogen mixing of up to 10% may be used in CGD networks. So as we have also seen that government is focusing to blend 10% of ethanol in petrol and 5% of ethanol in the biodiesel by 2025. So all these things are interlinked. So the benefits of this will be, it's a low carbon compound that can help decarbonize industries including iron and steel, chemicals, and transportation. Renewable energy that can be stored or used by the grid can be funneled into hydrogen production. So it will increase the productivity and the efficiency of the renewable energy sources, which will automatically reduce the costs of electric vehicles also. So that is why this whole thing is very very important. So what actions has the Indian government taken to promote this? Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced the commencement of the hydrogen energy mission to manufacture hydrogen from renewable energy sources during her budget speech in February 2021. In the same month, the state-owned Indian Oil Corporation struck a deal with the Greenstat Norway to establish a hydrogen center of excellence. It will support R&D projects between Norwegian and Indian R&D institutions and universities for the generation of green and blue hydrogen. So this blue hydrogen question was also asked in the prelims 2021. So that is why this proper analysis of the keywords which are mentioned in the news, which are there in the news, that has to be done by the candidates themselves, because UPSC picks the questions from very slightest of or very small keywords which are there in the news, which have the least probability to be asked. So that is why this thing is very important, to properly analyze a particular current affairs topic, particularly from the prelims point of view. That ultimately helps you to write better quality answers in the mains also, because your analytical skills automatically enhance, so that you are able to appreciate a particular question which is asked, and frame your content according to the demand of the question, and write a well structured and a logical and a coherent answer which meets the demands of the question, ultimately which enhances your chances of scoring above average or one of the highest marks in that particular question and in the overall paper also. So the prelims hot link topics are: green hydrogen is a renewable energy source. What method is used to create it? Its applications, benefits. The hydrogen energy mission is all about what the hydrogen energy, what it is. So you have to study that. The source of this news is Economic Times. Next is, what is the UVC technology? It is from GS paper 3, and topic scientific inventions related to bioconservation, environmental conservation. So in the context is, one of the most effective methods for disinfecting water is UVC water purification. Special germicidal UVC lamps that emit high intensity UV light purifies the water without the use of harsh chemicals that are damaging to the environment, which are used in this procedure. So what is UV radiation and how does it work? So the region of the electromagnetic spectrum between X-rays and visible light is known as the UV radiation. This is very important from the prelims point of view. Sunlight is the most prevalent source of UV radiation, which emits three types of UV rays. This is also a very important statement from the prelims point of view. So some important facts: UVA photons have the longest wavelengths, whereas UVB and UVC have the shortest. All these things are very important from the prelims point of view. So while UVA and UVB pass through the atmosphere, Earth's ozone layer absorbs all UVC and some UVB rays. As a result, the majority of UV rays you encounter are UVA with a tiny proportion of UVB. So this is these all statements are very important from the prelims point of view. These are very good candidates to be potential statements in the prelims exam. So that is why you have to remember them. So what is the purpose of UV rays? They are commonly employed or used to kill bacteria and other microbes, particularly mainly to disinfect water, which automatically enhances its potability, which reduces the chances of waterborne diseases, thereby improving the health of the population and thereby enhancing their ease of living, which ultimately enhances their chances to acquire better quality of education, to enhance their economic productivity, and thus to lead a better quality of life, thereby enhancing their ease of living, which automatically enhances their chances of a higher income and thereby improving the probability of tax prospects for the government, which creates a virtuous cycle which enhances the per capita income of population, thereby enhancing the tax prospects of the government, which automatically enhances the spending by the government on the critical and the non-critical infrastructure like the health, education, sanitation, water and housing, thereby enhancing the social economic development prospects for India, and thereby enhancing the vision of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. So that is why proper analysis of the current affairs is very important. So UVC, commonly known as ultraviolet germicidal irradiation, is a disinfectant treatment that kills or inactivates bacteria by destroying their nucleic acids and altering their DNA. So while studying for prelims, you have to study what is DNA, what is different types of bacteria, the different types of UV lights, how the technology kills this bacteria, so it renders them unable to perform important biological tasks and stopping their replication. So UVGI is used in a range of disinfection applications including food, air and water. So is it suitable for human consumption? The device was created exclusively to sterilize non-living objects according to the researchers. As a result, the UVC radiation employed in this device could be damaging to living beings, skin and eyes. So this is also very important from the prelims point of view. So the prelims hot link topics are a diagram illustrating the electromagnetic spectrum in regards to UV rays, its types and features. The source of this news is this article published on the news medical.net website. Next is how the political parties are registered. It is from GS paper 2 and topic is election related issues. So context, Amrinder Singh has filed an application with the EC to register his new political party, the Punjab Local Congress Party, under section 29A of the RPA 1951, Representation of People's Act 1951. So this is the this particular thing, section 29A of the RPA 1951. This thing is important from the prelims, from the exam point of view. So what's next? Any party seeking registration with the EC must file an application within 30 days of its inception according to the Election Commission. This is in accordance with the Commission's instructions issued in the exercise of the powers granted on it by Article 324 of the Constitution and Section 29A of the Representation of the People's Act 1951. So both these things are important from the prelims point of view. So the political parties must be registered. The provisions of section 29A of the RPA 1951 govern the registration of political parties. A party seeking a registration with the EC under the provisions of this section must submit an application to the Commission within the time period specified after its formation, following the guidelines prescribed by ECI in exercise of the powers conferred by Article 324 of the Constitution of India and Section 29A of the RPA 1951. So the guidelines are: the applicant is required to publish the proposed name of the party in 2 national newspapers and 2 local dailies according to the existing criteria. It shall also allow 2 days for any objections to the proposed registration of the party to be filed with the Commission within 30 days of its publication. The notice of publication is also available on the EC's website. So to be eligible for a national party, the following criteria must be met. At a general election for the House of the People or the State Legislative Assembly, it receives at least 6% of the valid votes cast in any 4 or more states. Furthermore, it must gain at least 4 seats in the House of People from any state or states. It gets at least 2% of the seats in the House of People, which is the Lok Sabha, 11 seats of the total of 543 seats, and these members are elected from at least 3 distinct states. So to be considered from a state political party, following criteria must be met. It obtains at least 6% of the legitimate votes cast in a general election in the state, either for the House of the People or the state's Legislative Assembly. Furthermore, it was elected to at least 2 seats in the state's Legislative Assembly. It must win at least 3% of the total number of members in the state's Legislative Assembly or 3 seats in the Assembly, whichever is greater. Benefits: if a party is recognized as a state party, it is entitled to exclusive allotment of its reserved symbol to candidates it creates in the state in which it is recognized, and if a party is recognized as a national party, it is entitled to exclusive allotment of its reserved symbol to candidates it creates across India. So the recognized state and national parties require only one proposer to file a nomination and are entitled to 2 sets of electoral rolls free of charge at the time of roll revision, as well as 1 copy of the electoral roll free of charge during general elections. During general elections, they also will have access to broadcast and telecast services via Akashvani and Doordarshan. Star campaigners' travel expenses are not to be included in the election expense records of their party's candidates. So the prelims hot link topics are: political parties must be registered, political parties that are recognized versus parties that aren't recognized, parties from the state versus national level, political parties with a track record of success are eligible for benefits. What makes someone a star campaigner? The Indian Constitution's Article 324, RPA Act 1951, Section 29A. So source of this news is this article published on the indiatoday.in website. So next is about the lateral entry. It is from GS paper 2 and topic is role of civil services in India. So context: the Union Public Service Commission's UPSC's recent proposal of 31 applicants for the induction into senior and mid-level positions in various union ministries is the second such initiative to integrate expertise from the private private sector into the senior and intermediate level of bureaucracy. In 2019, 9 lateral entrants from the private sector were also inducted. What is the problem that specialists have identified? Experts have expressed concern about the recruitment process. According to them, meritocracy requires that professional recruitment procedures pass the merit test in a fair and transparent manner. The foundation of modern merit-based bureaucracy is the fair selection and appointment of government officials. As a result, any modification from the established approach must also meet the requirements of a fair recruitment procedure. The necessity of the hour. The recruitment procedure for induction of lateral candidates should be launched in the parliament to be constitutionally correct and to strengthen the legitimacy of the motion. A complete legal approach would not only assist but bring clarity to different facets of lateral entry recruiting, but it will also legitimize the practice and give it greater political support. So what does it mean to have a lateral entry into government? In its 3-year action agenda, Niti Aayog recommends it. Personnel will be inducted into the federal government at the middle or high management levels. These lateral entrants will work in the central secretariat, which normally only employs career bureaucrats from the All India Services and Central Civil Services. Importance and necessity. Lateral entrants possess specialized subject knowledge and experience. Meets the twin objectives of bringing in new talent and increasing personal availability. It allows stakeholders in the governance process, such as the commercial sector and non-profits, to engage. It will aid in the transformation of organizational culture in the government sector. So why is it that lateral entry is sometimes chastised? So these appointments are without reserve. They are viewed as backdoors via which a political party might publicly bring its own constituents. So the prelims hotlink topics are about Article 309 through 312 in summary. So source of this news is this article published on theprint.in. So next is about the fly ash. So it is from GS paper 3 and topic is conservation related issues. So context, fly ash from the North Chennai thermal power station has been found in the Kosathilayar. According to activists and fishermen, a leak in the pipeline bringing ash to the ash pond caused this. What exactly is fly ash? It is a coal combustion product known as flue ash or pulverized fuel ash. Composition: composed of the particles and flue gases that are expelled from coal-fired boilers. The components of fly ash vary depending on the source and content of the coal being burned, but all fly ash contains significant levels of silicon dioxide, aluminum oxide, and calcium oxide, the major mineral constituents in coal-bearing rock strata. Arsenic, beryllium, boron, cadmium, chromium, hexavalent chromium, cobalt, lead, manganese, mercury, molybdenum, selenium, strontium, thallium, and vanadium, as well as dioxins and PAH compounds, are minor ingredients. It also contains carbon that hasn't been burned. Hazards to human health and the environment. Harmful heavy metals are present. Nickel, cadmium, arsenic, chromium, lead, and other heavy metals found in fly ash are all toxic in nature. Fly ash carries 100 times more radiation than nuclear waste. It causes water pollution. So the destruction of mangroves, significant reductions in crop yields, and pollution from groundwater in the run of Kutch due to ash sludge from nearby coal power stations have all been extensively documented. So it can be used in the following ways. Sand is used in concrete manufacturing as a substitute for Portland cement. Fly ash pellets can be used in place of regular aggregate in concrete mixtures. fills in the form of embankments and other structural elements, production of cement clinker as a substitute material for clay, soft soil stabilization, construction of the roads subbase as a substitute for aggregate, example for brick production, soil amendment, fertilizer, cow feeders, soil stabilization in stock feed yards, and agricultural stakes are all examples of agricultural usage. For ice control, use of loose application on roadways and parking lots. So the prelims hot link topics are what exactly is fly ash, its sources, its pollutants, and the applications that it could be used in. The source of this news is The Hindu. Next is the Istanbul Convention on Violence Against Women. So it is from GS1 and GS2. Topic is women empowerment and international organizations. So context: hundreds of women are murdered every year in Turkey, and popular hashtags on social media and street rallies have become all too common. This month, a particularly heinous murder has sparked widespread outrage over the government's alleged failure to prevent gender based violence, according to women's rights groups. Activists claim that by withdrawing from the Istanbul Convention, a historic Council of Europe agreement from 2011 defining how to secure women's safety, Turkey has abandoned a path that it was the first country to sign. So, background: Turkey became the first country to ratify the Istanbul Convention on November 24, 2011, and to adopt it into local legislation on March 8, 2012. Why is it that withdrawal is being chastised? Turkey has faced harsh criticism from a variety of sectors, resulting in nationwide rallies. Despite the country's unacceptably high rates of violence and femicide, the country has withdrawn from the pact. In the Global Gender Gap Report 2021, the country is ranked 133rd out of 156 countries. According to UN Women data, 38% of Turkish women experience abuse from a partner at some point in their lives. There are no official records of femicides kept by the Turkish government. What are the causes for Turkey's decision to leave? According to the report, the conference denigrates traditional family structures, encourages divorce, and promotes acceptance of LGBTQ people in society. It also claimed that it has sufficient local laws to defend women's rights. Concerns: domestic violence against women and girls has become more prevalent over the world as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. People are also concerned that Turkish women's basic rights and safeguards may now be jeopardized. What is the Istanbul Convention and why is it important? The Council of European Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence is the name for it. The treaty is the first legally enforceable agreement aimed at preventing and combating violence against women in the globe. Domestic abuse, rape, sexual assault, female genital mutilation, so called honor based violence, and forced marriage are all covered by this extensive legal framework. When a government ratifies the convention, it commits to upholding it. On April 7, 2011, the Council of Europe's Committee of Ministers approved the treaty. When it comes to combating violence against women, the convention establishes basic standards that states must adhere to. So the prelims hot link topics are: when did it get signed, which country is the first to sign the convention, which country just opted to leave the convention, what exactly is the Council of Europe. So source of this news is this article published on www.aljazeera.com website. So next is about the National Productivity Council. So it is a prelim specific topic. So the National Productivity Council, NPC, is an autonomous multi-paritative non-profit non-profit organization that was founded in 1958 by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry of the Government of India. NPC is a member of the Asian Productivity Organization (APO), a Tokyo-based intergovernmental body in which the Indian government is a founding member. So source of this news is this article published on the globalvillagespace.com website. So thanks a lot for watching the analysis video. Have a nice day.